I came back from my trip without telling anyone. It was supposed to be a surprise. A Christmas surprise. The house was glowing from the street, every window lit. The garden covered in tiny white lights dancing across the palms. From the sidewalk, it looked perfect, like one of those magazine covers showing the warmth of family holidays. But warmth is a strange illusion. Sometimes, it hides the cold better than anything else. I rolled my suitcase quietly to the door. The one Claire loved, glass framed in dark wood. With a brass handle she insisted on polishing herself. I was smiling, ready to step inside, ready to say, "Merry Christmas. Honey, I'm home early." Then I heard it, laughter. Not the kind that feels like home. The kind that stings. It was coming from the living room. I could make out multiple voices. Glasses clinking. A man's loud, confident laugh. My son's voice. Stephen. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be in New York with Amanda's family. With her rich parents. With people who never really liked me. But smiled because they had to. Curious. I left my suitcase by the door and walked in slowly. The living room glowed with golden light. Music was playing, Sinatra. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. The kind of song that used to make Claire hum in the kitchen. And there they were, Stephen, Amanda, her parents, all of them laughing, drinking, eating in my house. Amanda's father raised his glass and said, "To new beginnings." And everyone toasted, like they were celebrating something that didn't include me. Then, through the glass doors leading to the balcony, I saw her. Claire. She was sitting alone, wrapped in her gray shawl. Her favorite one, the one she used to wear when she waited for me on cold evenings. She wasn't smiling. She was crying, silently, staring at the Christmas tree lights flickering in the reflection of the ocean beyond. No one inside noticed her. No one even looked. And I just stood there, unseen, watching my wife cry while my son celebrated in the house I built. The house I had given them all. The house that was supposed to be our symbol of everything we survived together. In that moment, something inside me went still. Not angry, not yet. Just still. Because sometimes, when the truth finally hits you, there's no explosion, only silence. I didn't need to hear words. I already understood everything. I stepped back into the shadows, unseen, and watched. I watched my son, 32, educated, pampered, raise his glass like he owned the place. I watched Amanda whisper something in his ear, smiling that cold, confident smile of hers. The kind of smile that always seemed to say, "I'm the one in control." And I realized, the invasion had already begun. Not with force, not with shouting, but with entitlement, manipulation, and slow erosion of respect. That's when I knew, this wasn't a family gathering. It was an occupation. But before I tell you how I fought back, how I took back everything they tried to steal, you need to understand who I am. My name is Michael Anderson. I'm 62 years old. I own a chain of boutique hotels in the Florida Keys, 6 properties. Built from scratch, 30 years ago, when nobody believed in luxury tourism there. Today, they generate over $40 million a year. And every dollar came from sweat, risk, and faith, not inheritance, not luck. It's the kind of life people envy, and they should. But what most don't understand is the price I paid for it. Long nights, failed investments, the loneliness of leadership, and sacrifices no one ever sees. Claire, my wife, was there for all of it. We've been married 35 years. When we started, we had nothing but dreams and an old pickup truck. She cleaned rooms, handled guests at midnight, worked the reception desk when I couldn't afford staff. She believed when no one else did. We made it, together. And for decades, I thought that kind of loyalty was unbreakable. Then there's Stephen, our only son. Architect, at least, on paper. He had the degree, but never the drive, always chasing excuses. The market's unstable. Clients are difficult. I'm networking. In reality, he was living off monthly transfers from me. And then came Amanda. She was beautiful, educated, the daughter of old money. 3 years younger than him. but decades more experienced in getting what she wanted. When they married, everything changed. Stephen began visiting less, calling less. Amanda needed to be near her family in New York because, of course, her family mattered more than the one that raised him. Claire noticed the distance first. I brushed it off. Let them live their life, I said. But behind her silence, Claire was hurting. She'd look at pictures of the grandchildren, twins, 2 years old, on social media, because that was the only way we saw them. And every time she mentioned her pain, Stephen had an answer ready. Mom, don't be dramatic, we'll visit soon. But they never did, unless they needed something. Money for an investment, a loan for a medical emergency, an advance on his inheritance for some once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And like the fool I was, I always gave it. Because that's what parents do, right? They help. But help becomes dependence. And dependence, when fed too long, becomes entitlement. I didn't know it then, but that's when I started losing him. Not to distance, to greed. When I left for Europe that November, I told Claire it was for business, meetings, expansion, investors. She smiled and said she'd miss me. I promised I'd be back before Christmas. And I meant it. The first 2 weeks were normal. She sent me messages every day, photos of the house, small updates about the foundation she managed. But then, something changed. The texts became shorter, colder. Her tone, distant. When I called, she sounded distracted, like she was somewhere else, not physically, but emotionally. When I asked if she was okay, she said, "Yes, of course, you're imagining things." But I wasn't imagining anything. A husband knows when something shifts. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. That's when I made my decision. To come home early. To surprise Claire. To see, with my own eyes, what was happening. I thought I was coming home to rediscover my family. But instead, I walked into a house already stolen. By those who carried my last name. Success doesn't happen overnight. It's built brick by brick, and sometimes, those same bricks you use to build your empire become the walls separating you from the people you love. When I was 30, I took a gamble most people called suicidal. I bought a piece of land on the Florida coast, empty, swampy, mosquito-ridden, and said, "This is where I'll build my first hotel." They laughed. They said I'd drown in debt. They said no one would pay luxury prices to stay in the middle of nowhere. They were wrong. And I was right. But what they never tell you about being right is that it often means being alone. Back then, Claire was my entire team. She was 27, cleaning rooms, checking in guests, managing the books. When I couldn't pay staff, she stayed up with me until dawn, folding towels and balancing receipts by hand. Sometimes, we argued, sometimes, we cried, but we always pushed through, because we had a shared dream. Those years were brutal. I remember one night when the pipes burst in 5 rooms at once. We didn't have a plumber, so I spent the night crawling through water while Claire held a flashlight, whispering, "We'll laugh about this one day." And we did. Years later, when the first big investor arrived, I showed him those same rooms, now luxury suites, and said, "This is what stubbornness can buy." The hotels grew. 1 became 3, then 6. And the name Anderson Boutique Hotels started to mean something in Florida. By the time I turned 50, I was wealthy and exhausted. We had everything people dream of. But in quiet moments, I began to wonder, what did we lose along the way? Claire would look at me during dinner, and I could see in her eyes that something had changed, a kind of distance only built over time. Not anger, not resentment, just weariness. We rarely fought, but we also rarely talked. Still, she stayed by my side. She found new purpose managing a charity foundation for single mothers, something that made her eyes light up again. And I thought, good, she's happy. But I was wrong again. She wasn't happy, just surviving. Then came Stephen. Our only son, our miracle. Born when Claire was 29. When we were still building our first hotel, I remember holding him for the first time, promising myself I'd give him everything I never had: security, comfort, opportunity. And that's exactly what I did. I gave him everything. And that was the problem. Stephen grew up in the shadow of success he didn't have to earn. Private schools, expensive tutors, family trips to Europe. He had every privilege. And somewhere along the way, I mistook providing for parenting. When he was in high school, he told me he wanted to be an architect. I was proud, thought he'd continue the legacy. But when he graduated, something changed. He didn't want to start at the bottom. He wanted instant recognition. He didn't want to build. He wanted to be handed a project, a title, a name. When he didn't get it, he blamed the world, the economy, the market, his professors, anyone but himself. I thought he'd grow out of it. Instead, he found someone who made his excuses feel justified. Amanda. She came from old New York money, the kind of family that measures worth in last names, not effort. She was charming, confident, and dangerous in the way ambition wrapped in elegance always is. The first time Claire met her, she whispered to me, "She's beautiful, but she's not kind." I didn't listen. Because Stephen was smiling again, and I mistook that smile for happiness. Their wedding was beautiful, extravagant, and entirely paid for by me. It was the kind of day where everyone smiles for photos but no one really feels connected. After that, they moved to New York. "Dad, that's where the work is," Stephen told me. Work. I almost laughed. He hadn't had a real client in 6 months. But still, every month, I wired him money, to help with rent, to help with the car, to help with everything. I thought I was helping. In truth, I was financing his weakness. Amanda had standards. She needed the right neighborhood, the right furniture, the right vacations. And Stephen, always eager to please, always terrified of disappointing, said yes to all of it. Every call became a request. Every, "Hi, Dad," became, "Can you help us this month?" And I always did, because saying no felt cruel. Because I believed love meant giving, not guiding. Claire saw it long before I did. "Michael," she said one night, "you're not helping him, you're keeping him helpless." I brushed it off. "He's our son, Claire." She sighed, the kind of sigh that says she's already seen the ending I refuse to admit. "He's not a boy anymore. He's a man who refuses to stand on his own feet. And Amanda, she's teaching him how to lean even harder." She was right, of course. But I didn't want to see it. The distance grew quietly. The calls became less frequent. When Claire mentioned missing the twins, Stephen would say, "We're busy, Mom, we'll visit soon." But soon never came. The photos online were our only connection, birthdays we weren't invited to, vacations we didn't know about. And still, every time they asked for help, I said yes. Because part of me was still that father from 30 years ago, the man who'd do anything for his child. Until last November. That's when I told Claire I was leaving for Europe. 3 weeks, maybe 4. A business trip, I said, expansion into the Caribbean. But really, I just needed space, to think, to breathe, to be away from the feeling that everything I'd built was starting to slip away. She smiled, that soft smile she used when she didn't want to argue. "I'll miss you," she said. "I'll miss you too," I replied, meaning it more than she knew. For the first 2 weeks, we talked every day. She sent photos of the Christmas decorations, the tree by the window, the lights on the porch, the little nativity scene she always insisted on placing near the piano. But then, the tone changed. Her messages became shorter. Her voice on the phone, distant. When I asked if she was okay, she said she was just tired. But I knew Claire. And that wasn't tired, that was something else. Something like fear. By the end of the 3rd week, I couldn't take it anymore. I booked an early flight back to Florida. No calls, no messages. I wanted to surprise her. I landed in Key West the evening of December 23rd. The air was warm, heavy with the smell of salt and jasmine. I remember thinking, this is home, This is where everything started. I didn't know that by the time I reached my front door, I'd discover everything that could destroy it. When the taxi turned into our neighborhood that night, everything looked exactly as I'd left it. The same palm trees wrapped in white lights. The same quiet hum of ocean wind brushing against the houses. Only this time, there was one difference. My house was alive. Every window glowed. Laughter spilled out like a song I wasn't invited to. I checked my watch, 7:58 p.m. Too early for Claire to be asleep. Too late for her to be hosting anyone. The driver helped with my suitcase. And I told him, "No, thank you, I'll carry it from here." Because I wanted the silence, that quiet before walking into what I thought was going to be a joyful surprise. The plan was simple. Walk in. See Claire's shocked face. Laugh. Hug her. Maybe cry a little. Instead, what I got was the sound of champagne corks and a woman's laugh I recognized instantly. Amanda. That high, polished tone that always carried a layer of superiority, even when she said the word, thanks. What the hell was she doing here? They were supposed to be in New York. I set my suitcase down in the entryway and pushed the door open. The smell of roasted turkey, pine, and expensive perfume hit me all at once. Inside, the living room looked like a Christmas card, a fire burning, a tree glittering, presents stacked high. But what I saw next froze me where I stood. Stephen was standing at the bar, pouring wine for Amanda's parents. Amanda sat on the couch, legs crossed, swirling her glass, laughing with her mother. My son, my only son, looked completely at home. As if this house, my house, already belonged to him. No one saw me. And for a moment, I didn't move. I just stood in the shadow of the hallway, watching a life that had quietly replaced me. Then I looked toward the balcony. Through the glass doors, I saw Claire. She sat alone, a glass of wine in her hand, her shoulders trembling. Tears shimmered under the golden light of the Christmas tree reflection. She wasn't part of the celebration, she was a ghost in her own home. That image, it branded itself into my memory. Inside, Amanda's father, a man in his mid-60s with a voice that had probably commanded boardrooms his whole life, raised his glass. "Well," he said loudly, "finally, we can enjoy this place properly without Michael barking orders around." The room laughed. Amanda rolled her eyes and said, "Dad, please, Mom might hear you." Her father chuckled. "Claire? She won't say anything. Poor woman barely speaks these days." And that's when I realized, Claire wasn't crying because she missed me. She was crying because she'd been cornered. I moved closer, silent as a ghost, staying just behind the wall separating the hallway from the living room. Amanda's voice rose again, smooth but sharp. "Honestly, Stephen, this place is perfect for us. The kids love it, and Mom and Dad could visit more often once we make it official." Stephen hesitated, glancing toward the balcony. "Official?" he asked quietly. Amanda's tone turned syrupy, the kind of manipulation you only notice when you're not the one being seduced. "Stephen, your father is 62. How many good years do you think he has left? 20? Maybe. Why wait until we're middle-aged to live the life we deserve?" Stephen said nothing. Amanda leaned in. "Convince him. Tell him to transfer the property, for tax purposes. For estate planning. Use whatever excuse works. You know how he is. Always practical." Her father joined in. "Exactly. Get the legal team to make it sound smart, asset protection. Long-term planning. Once it's signed, it's irreversible. You secure your future." Stephen's voice cracked. "I don't know if he'll go for it. He's not stupid." Amanda's mother spoke up softly, fake sympathy dripping from her tone. "Then start with Claire. She's lonely, vulnerable. You've been visiting, helping with the twins. She trusts you. She'll do it for you." Amanda smiled. "She's already halfway there. Just needs a little more persuasion." My heart dropped. They weren't just talking about a house. They were talking about manipulation. About turning my wife into their pawn. About stealing everything I had built, one signature at a time. I clenched my jaw. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. The fury that came wasn't loud, it was cold. Precise. Like a blade sliding into place. I finally understood why Claire's voice had changed. Why her messages had grown shorter. Why she sounded distant. She had been enduring this, day after day. Smile after forced smile, while I was half a world away. And in that moment, standing in the shadows of my own home, I made a promise. They would regret ever underestimating me. I took one last look at Claire. She turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting mine through the glass. For a second, she froze, disbelief, shock, then something else. Relief. Tears spilled again. I lifted a finger to my lips. Shush. I opened the balcony door quietly, reached out my hand, and whispered, "Come with me." She didn't ask where. She didn't hesitate. She just took my hand, the same hand that had built her world, and followed me into the dark. We slipped out through the side garden, moving like shadows. The laughter behind us grew louder, echoing through the windows. None of them noticed we were gone. When we reached my car parked down the street, Claire's voice broke through the silence. "What's happening?" I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, saw the fear she'd been hiding. "I heard everything," I said quietly. "I know what they've been doing." She covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes again. "They've been pressuring me, Michael, for weeks, telling me the house is too big, that I should move, that Stephen needs it for his family." I tried to resist, but I stopped her gently. "You should have called me. I didn't want to burden you while you were working. I thought maybe I was overreacting." "Claire," I said, gripping the steering wheel, my voice steady. "You are never a burden. And you are never alone. Not while I'm alive." She looked at me, half in shock, half in relief. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, started the engine, and answered without hesitation. "Justice, Claire, cold, calculated, irreversible justice." The engine roared to life. The house, still glowing in the distance, stood behind us like a monument of betrayal. And as we drove away, leaving the laughter and the lies behind, I made another silent vow. They thought they were taking my house. They had no idea I was about to take their peace, their comfort, their sense of security, piece by piece. Because revenge, when done right, isn't loud. It's silent, surgical. And when it lands, it leaves no survivors, only lessons. The road from my house to the city center was empty that night. Christmas Eve lights blinked across Key West like nothing in the world was wrong. But inside our car, silence cut deeper than any blade. Claire sat beside me, clutching her hands, staring out the window. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything: guilt, fear, relief. After a few minutes, I said quietly, "Tell me everything." And she did. Every word, every manipulation, every quiet humiliation they had put her through while I was gone. How Stephen had arrived 3 weeks earlier with Amanda, their kids, and her parents, just to spend the holidays by the beach. How the comments started small: "Mom, this house must be lonely. You should downsize." Then more direct: "Dad should transfer the property. You know, for tax reasons." And finally, outright demands. When she refused to sign anything, Amanda accused her of being selfish. Her parents called her naive. Stephen told her she didn't trust him, her own son. They made her doubt herself. They cornered her emotionally until she cried in silence on the very balcony where I found her. I gripped the steering wheel harder with every word. Claire's voice trembled when she said, "They said they had papers ready, Michael, that all I needed was my signature. When I refused, Amanda called me pathetic, said I was wasting an opportunity. Then they started that party, like they'd already won." I didn't answer. Because what could I say that would comfort her? There's no comfort for betrayal that comes from your own blood. I drove straight to one of my hotels downtown, the biggest one. At that hour, it was quiet except for the hum of distant traffic and faint Christmas music from the lobby. I booked the presidential suite under a fake name and led Claire upstairs. Once she was inside, I turned to her and said, "Stay here. Rest. Don't answer calls. Don't open the door. From this moment on, you're out of their reach." She grabbed my hand, desperate. "Michael, what are you going to do?" I looked at her and said, with the calmest voice I've ever used in my life, "I'm going to end this. Tonight." Then I left. The first call I made was to my lawyer, Daniel Harper, a man who'd been with me for 20 years. When he answered, his voice was groggy. "Michael, it's Christmas Eve. Is everything okay?" "No," I said, "and that's why you're going to get dressed." There was silence on the line. "What do you need?" "I need documents. Tonight. A revocation of Stephen's power of attorney. A new will. A full disinheritance. And the immediate transfer of all assets into a lifetime trust with Claire as the sole beneficiary. Everything after her goes to charity. Can you do it?" "That's nuclear." "It's necessary." "How soon?" He hesitated. "Give me 2 hours." "You've got one." The second call was to a locksmith, one I trusted with every property I owned. "Rick, I need you at my house. Now." "Michael, it's Christmas Eve. Triple rate, $5,000 bonus, and breakfast on me tomorrow. Change every lock in the house. Install a new security system. Codes known only to me and Claire. Tonight." There was a pause. Then, "I'll be there in 90 minutes. The third call was to Officer Miller, a friend. A cop who handled security for my hotels during tourist season. When he answered, I didn't waste time. "Miller, I have people illegally occupying my house. They've been coercing my wife. I have evidence of fraud and conspiracy. I need them out before sunrise." He whistled quietly. "That serious?" "Yes, and I have it all on video." "You sure you want to go this route? It's your son." "Not tonight." "It isn't," I said coldly. "Tonight. It's just another criminal trespassing on private property." "Understood. Get me proof. I'll send a unit." Then I drove back toward the house. Not inside, not yet. I parked in the shadows of the driveway, where I could see through the large front windows. Inside, the party was still going strong. Amanda was laughing. Stephen was drinking. Her father was talking loudly about asset protection. And Claire's empty wine glass still sat abandoned on the balcony table. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and started filming. Minute after minute of footage, their laughter, their arrogance, their assumption that they had already won. After 30 minutes, I got what I needed. Amanda, loud enough for everyone to hear, said, "Tomorrow, we'll tell Claire that Michael already approved the transfer. All she has to do is sign. By the time he finds out, it'll be too late. Stephen will have the title, and the house will be ours, legally." Her mother added, "And then we move on to the hotels. He's old. He can't run all that forever." Amanda smirked. "Exactly. In 6 months, we'll control everything. He'll realize it's over. The new generation's in charge." I stopped recording. It was perfect. Time-stamped. Clear audio. Clear video. They had just signed their own sentence. By midnight, Daniel arrived at his office, hair messy, tie crooked, coffee in hand. I walked in, still wearing the same suit I left Europe in. He slid a thick folder across the desk. "It's all here," he said. "Revocation of power of attorney, effective immediately. Stephen's out. New will. Claire's lifetime trust. Then charities. Stephen gets nothing. And the house transfer. Done. Filed electronically. Time-stamped before 4 a.m. "Perfect," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You realize once I file this, it's permanent. No turning back." "I know," I said. "Do it." At 1 a.m., Rick, the locksmith, texted, "We're here." I drove back to the house. From the street, I could see the last lights still on, Amanda's parents sleeping in my guest rooms. Stephen passed out on the couch, half-empty glasses scattered everywhere. Rick worked quietly, changing every lock, every code, every entry point. Front door, side door, garage, sliding doors. By 4 a.m., it was done. "New keys," Rick said, handing me a small black envelope. "Only 4 copies, 2 for you, 2 for your wife." Anyone else tries to enter. Alarms trigger direct to the police station. And, Merry Christmas, I guess. I smiled faintly. You too, Rick. At 4:30 a.m., Daniel called again. All documents filed, stamped, and recorded. Claire is now the sole beneficiary. The trust is locked. Stephen can't touch a cent. Good, I said. Send me certified copies in the morning. By 6 a.m., the sky started to lighten. I stood outside my house again, my real house. My reclaimed house, with Officer Miller and 2 patrol cars parked in silence. I handed him the recordings, the documents, everything. You sure about this, Michael? He asked. Completely. He sighed. This is going to be messy. No, I said, my voice cold. This is going to be clean. He nodded. Let's do it. I walked to the front door, my new door, and knocked. Hard. Once, twice. Inside, movement. Footsteps, confused voices. Then Stephen's voice. Who the hell? He opened the door. When he saw me, his face went pale. Dad? Behind me, the red and blue lights flashed silently across the driveway. Before he could speak, Officer Miller stepped forward. Stephen Anderson, we have reports of illegal occupation of this property and attempted fraud. I'm going to need you and all occupants to leave immediately. Stephen's eyes widened. Illegal occupation? This is my parents' house. Without the owner's permission, I interrupted. I did not authorize your stay, Stephen, and you have been coercing Claire to sign fraudulent documents. I have the proof, audio, video, and legal testimony. Dad, what are you talking about? We're family. No, I said, stepping closer. Family doesn't conspire. Family doesn't manipulate. Family doesn't try to steal what it didn't build. Amanda appeared behind him in a silk robe, eyes burning. You can't kick us out. Stephen has rights. Stephen has no rights to anything. I said. This house is now in an irrevocable trust under Claire's name. Legally, it's hers, and none of you belong here. Amanda's father stepped forward, trying to smooth things over. Michael, let's be reasonable. There is no discussion. I cut him off. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Clothes, essentials, nothing else. Then you leave, or these officers will escort you out. Amanda hissed. This is abuse. Maybe, I said, but it's legal, and after what you did, you're lucky I didn't press charges. I turned to Stephen. 30 minutes, I repeated, start packing. When they were gone, the sun had fully risen. I stood in the doorway, the ocean breeze moving through the empty hallways. The house was mine again. Clean, silent. Exactly as it should be. I picked up a wine glass left on the table, rinsed it under the sink, and whispered to myself, Merry Christmas. Because that morning, justice had come home. The sun rose over Key West like nothing had happened. Golden light spilled through the palm trees, touching the ocean in that familiar shimmer I used to love. But that morning, it didn't look beautiful. It looked sterile, like light shining on something already dead. Inside my house, the silence was thick, punctuated only by the sound of drawers opening and suitcases zipping shut. Stephen and Amanda were packing. Their parents whispered angrily to each other. The police stood near the door, arms crossed, quiet but watchful. Every few minutes, I'd glance at my watch. 27 minutes left. Stephen came down the stairs carrying a suitcase. His eyes were red, not from guilt, but from shock. He stopped in front of me. Dad, please, this isn't necessary. I didn't answer. He looked at the officers. Tell him he can't do this. Officer Miller's voice was steady. Your father is within his rights. Son, legally, the house belongs to your mother's trust. You're trespassing. Stephen swallowed hard, looking back at me. You filed everything last night? Yes. You disinherited me? Yes. His voice broke. I'm your son. I looked him straight in the eye. You were, until you decided to see me as a target. Amanda's voice came from the kitchen, sharp as broken glass. You'll regret this, Michael. You can't erase family. I turned toward her slowly. Family? I said softly. Family doesn't pressure a grieving woman to sign away her home. Family doesn't plan a takeover in her living room. You weren't guests in my house. Amanda, you were invaders. Her father stepped forward again. The kind of man who's used to controlling every room he walks into. Michael, you're acting emotionally. Let's sit down. Talk like adults. There's no need for police. I cut him off, calm but cold. You had that chance last night, when you toasted to my absence. He froze. You were here? I nodded. I heard everything. Amanda's mother gasped. Amanda's face drained of color. For the first time, silence fell in that room. The kind that tastes like shame. You have 20 minutes, I said quietly. Get out. While they gathered their things, I walked through the house. Every room was a reminder of betrayal, the wineglasses, the half-eaten desserts, the spilled champagne on the marble floor. The place looked like a crime scene, and in a way, it was. Not a crime of violence, a crime of greed. I stopped at the balcony where Claire had cried the night before. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, calm and unbothered, as if mocking human chaos. For the first time since I'd heard their voices, I let myself feel the anger. But it wasn't fiery, it was cold, measured, righteous. That's the thing about real anger. The kind that comes after betrayal. It doesn't scream. It calculates. When I came back downstairs, Stephen was standing at the door with 2 suitcases, his kids clinging to Amanda's leg, confused, scared. He looked at me one last time. Dad, please, don't do this in front of them. I stared at the children. 2 small faces, innocent, unaware of what their parents had done. This, I said quietly, is not being done to them. Stephen, it's being done for them. He frowned. What the hell does that mean? It means one day, they'll know what you did. And when they do, I want them to remember that consequences are real. Amanda grabbed the children's hands, muttering something under her breath, and stormed past me toward the door. Stephen followed. The officers escorted them to their cars. As the engines started, Amanda shouted from the window. You think this is over? Michael, we'll sue you. We'll take everything back. I stepped forward, held up a thick envelope, certified documents. Sealed, time-stamped. This is your lawsuit, I said. Every will, every trust, every recording, every piece of evidence. You won't win. You can't. It's over. Amanda glared, then slammed the car door shut. Her parents followed in silence. Stephen lingered for a moment longer, gripping the steering wheel, eyes wet. Dad, he whispered. But I didn't respond. Because some words don't deserve a reply. Then he drove away. The 2 police cars followed, their lights flashing softly against the morning sun, escorting the entire convoy out of my neighborhood. And just like that, the laughter, the arrogance, the invasion, it all vanished. What remained was silence. The kind of silence that hums after a storm, when you realize you've survived, but part of you is still shaking. Inside, the house looked hollow. The decorations, the lights, the half-eaten cake, they all felt like props in a play I never auditioned for. I started cleaning. Not because I had to, but because I needed to. I picked up glasses, emptied bottles, wiped down tables. Each motion was slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. I cleaned like a man exorcising ghosts. By the time I finished, the house was spotless again. But it didn't feel like home. Not yet. I walked to the phone, called the hotel suite where Claire was staying. She picked up immediately. Michael? It's done, I said. Done? They're gone, all of them, and they're not coming back. Her voice trembled. Is it really over? For now, I said softly, but we still have to rebuild what they broke. A pause. Then, quietly. What happens to Stephen? Nothing, I said. That's the consequence. He gets nothing. That evening, I brought Claire back home. When she walked through the door, she stopped, her eyes filling with tears. Not sadness, relief. She looked around, touched the walls, the kitchen counter, The family photos that had survived the chaos. And then she turned to me. Michael, what did you do? I handed her the envelope with the legal papers. This, I said, is yours. The house, the business, everything. It's all in your name now, in a trust that no one can touch. Not Stephen, not Amanda, not anyone. She covered her mouth, trembling. Why? Because you earned it, I said. You built this with me when we had nothing. And because no one, not even our son, will ever make you feel powerless again. She cried then, really cried. The kind of tears that cleanse, not wound. And as I held her, I realized something. Revenge hadn't made me feel victorious. It had made me feel clean. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about restoration, putting things back where they belong. We sat on the couch that night, the same couch where our family once shared Christmas mornings. The house was quiet. The tree lights still blinked, but this time, the light felt warm again. Claire rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "What now?" I looked at the fireplace, at the glow dancing across the room, and said, "Now, we live, without guilt, without fear, and if Stephen ever learns what integrity really means, maybe someday he'll earn his way back." She nodded, wiping her tears. And for the first time in years, we both smiled, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that comes after surviving it. Outside, the ocean was calm. Inside, so were we. Because the invasion was over. And in the stillness of that Christmas morning, justice had finally found its home. The days after Christmas felt strangely calm. No shouting, no phone calls, no chaos. Just silence, the kind that creeps through the walls after a storm and makes you realize how much noise you had mistaken for life. Claire and I spent that first week moving through the house like visitors in a museum. We spoke softly, as if afraid the ghosts of what happened might still be listening. She made breakfast again, something she hadn't done in weeks, and for a few brief mornings. I thought maybe, just maybe, peace had returned. But peace built on loss feels different. It's heavier. You can feel what it cost. Sometimes I'd walk into the living room and still see the shadows of that night, Stephen standing near the tree, Amanda laughing by the couch, her parents clinking glasses. They weren't there, of course, but my mind replayed it like a scar that hadn't finished healing. Claire tried to fill the silence. She worked more at her foundation, visited friends, cooked dinners we barely ate. And when she smiled, it never reached her eyes. One night, she sat beside me on the balcony, the same balcony where I'd first seen her crying, and asked, "Did we do the right thing?" I didn't answer right away. How do you answer a question like that? Finally, I said, "We did the necessary thing." She turned to look at me, her eyes searching. Necessary and right aren't always the same. I sighed. If we had given in, Claire, what would have happened next? They would have taken this house. Then the hotels. Then everything else. Where would it have ended? She nodded slowly. I know, but he's our son, Michael, our only son, and now, we don't have him. I looked out at the water, black and endless. He left us long before that night. We just didn't want to see it. We sat in silence after that, the only sound the steady rhythm of the waves below. She reached for my hand. Do you think he'll ever understand why you did it? Someday, I said, maybe not soon, but someday. Weeks passed. New Year's came and went. Then February, March. The silence stretched on. At first, Stephen didn't call. Then, when he finally did, it wasn't to apologize, it was to yell. Accusations, insults. Amanda's voice shouting in the background. I hung up after 30 seconds. That was the last time we spoke for months. During that silence, something unexpected happened, guilt. Not for what I'd done, but for what I'd lost. I had punished my son, but in doing so, I had sentenced myself to a kind of quiet no man should ever have to live in. Every father imagines growing old with his family around him, dinners, laughter, grandchildren running through the house. Instead, all I had was the sound of waves and the hum of an empty refrigerator. It's a strange thing. Justice can feel lonely when you win it honestly. Then, one afternoon, nearly a year later, my phone rang. It wasn't Stephen. It was Amanda. Her voice was different. Softer. Defeated. "Mr. Anderson," she said, "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from." "You're right," I replied. I wanted you to know Stephen and I are getting divorced." I didn't say anything. She continued. "It wasn't just me. I didn't make him do everything. He chose it, too. But I pushed. I believed money solved everything. And when it didn't, I blamed him. I blamed you. I was wrong." Her words caught me off guard. Maybe it was sincerity. Maybe it was just regret wearing makeup. Either way, she sounded human for the first time. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "The apartment, the friends, the reputation. I work in retail now, Mr. Anderson, minimum wage, and for the first time in my life, I understand what earning means." She took a deep breath. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I finally learned." I didn't say, "I forgive you." Because forgiveness is not a switch you flip. It's a gate that only time can open. But I did say this. "I hope that lesson stays with you. For your sake, not mine." There was silence on the line. Then she said, "It will." And hung up. A few months later, I heard from a friend in Miami, someone who owned a small architecture firm. "Michael," he said, "you'll never guess who applied for a junior position here." I didn't need to guess. "Your son." He laughed softly. "Yeah, and here's the surprise. He's actually good. Hardworking. Humble. Quiet. I didn't even know he was your kid until weeks later." I didn't say anything. He continued. "He's different, Michael, like he's trying to prove something." When I hung up, I just sat there, staring at the ocean again. Could it be true? Had the silence started to teach him what words never could? 1 year after that Christmas, Claire received a letter. It wasn't long. It wasn't poetic. But it was sincere. "Mom, I know Dad said not to contact you, but I needed to write this. The kids ask about you. I tell them you're busy. That you love them. That we'll see you again someday. Because I can't tell them the truth, not yet. I'm working now. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. And I think that's what I needed to learn. That money earned feels better than money given. I miss you. I think about you both every day. And I know it's too late for forgiveness. But maybe someday, you'll be proud of me again. Your son, Stephen." Claire read it at the dining table. She cried the whole time, her tears falling onto the page. When she handed it to me, her hands were trembling. "What do you think?" she asked. I read it twice, slowly, carefully. Then I said, "It sounds sincere." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "So, should I write him back?" I looked at her, then shook my head. "Not yet. Words are easy. Let's see if his actions match." That night, as we sat together on the balcony again, Claire said quietly, "Do you ever wonder if we failed him?" I didn't hesitate. "Every day." She turned to me, surprised. "But, Michael, you did everything for him." "That's exactly the problem," I said. "I gave him everything, except the chance to fail. And without failure, he never learned what strength is." She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "So this silence, maybe it's not punishment." "No," I said, "maybe it's education." We sat there, the wind moving gently through the palm leaves, the smell of salt filling the air. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like a void. It felt like a lesson still in progress, for him, for us, for everyone who's ever loved someone enough to let them fall. 2 years passed. 2 long years since that Christmas night, the night I threw my own son out of my house and erased his name from my will. 2 years of silence. Of distance. Of wondering if I'd saved him or destroyed him. Life had settled into a strange kind of normal. The hotels were thriving. Claire's foundation had doubled in size. We smiled again, but not the same kind of smile we used to. This one came slower, with the weight of memory behind it. And yet, in quiet moments, I still thought of him. Stephen. My son. The boy who used to run barefoot on the beach, chasing seagulls, laughing like he owned the horizon. The man who, somewhere along the line, forgot what honesty felt like. Sometimes I wondered if he was okay. Then I reminded myself, he's working now. He's standing on his own 2 feet. That's all I ever wanted. Still, deep down, I needed to know. Not as a father, as a man who believes in justice. Had the punishment worked? Had it taught him anything? One day, I found out, by accident. A close friend of mine, Tom Reynolds, called. He owns a small but respected architecture firm in Naples. We'd done business together years ago. He said, "Michael, your son works for me." I paused, letting the words sink in. "I didn't know," I said. "Well, he didn't tell me he was your son. I found out later, and I have to say, I'm impressed. He's not what I expected." "What do you mean?" "He's humble, focused. He works harder than anyone in the office. Never uses your name, never complains, never acts entitled. Honestly, he's good, really good." When the call ended, I just sat there, stunned. Humble, focused, hardworking. 3 words I never thought I'd hear in the same sentence as Stephen. Claire noticed my expression. "What is it?" she asked. "It's Stephen," I said. "He's working, really working." She smiled, not with excitement, but with something gentler. "Maybe the silence is doing its job," she said. But I wasn't ready to believe it yet. I'd seen false repentance before. People change when they're being watched. So, I needed to see who Stephen was when he thought no one was looking. That's when I came up with an idea. A test. A quiet one. Through a business acquaintance, a man who owed me a favor, I arranged for a potential client to contact Stephen's firm. The offer was generous. A boutique hotel design in Naples. A project large enough to change a young architect's career. The client was fake. Of course, a shell company I owned through another name. The contract looked legitimate, but buried inside was a clause, 1 line, small enough to overlook. Final payment is subject to the satisfaction of the undisclosed owner, who may modify terms at his discretion. A trap. Any competent lawyer would flag it. Any desperate man would ignore it. Now, I waited. A week later, the intermediary called me. He reviewed the contract, he said. And? He refused to sign, said the clause was too vague, that it gave the client too much power. He requested objective conditions for completion. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. He refused. He didn't bend. He didn't grab the bait. For the first time in 2 years, I smiled, a real smile. "Tell him," I said, "that the client agrees to his terms, and the project is approved." Or 3 months, I watched from a distance. Through weekly reports, drafts, progress updates, all under my silent supervision. Stephen's work was meticulous, thoughtful, creative. He met deadlines, respected budgets, treated everyone on the team with fairness. It wasn't the arrogance of the old Stephen. It was professionalism, quiet, consistent, earned. When the final design came in, I had it reviewed by one of my real developers. The verdict: "This is excellent work." I didn't just feel pride, I felt something heavier, deeper. Hope. That's when I knew the time had come. It was time to stop observing from the shadows. It was time to meet him. I set up the meeting through the same intermediary. "The client wants to discuss next steps," the message said. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., at Anderson Hotel, downtown Key West." Stephen agreed. He didn't know who the client was. He didn't know that for the past 3 months, the project he was pouring his soul into was a mirror held up by his own father. The next day, I arrived early. Same suit I wore that night 2 years ago, the night of the expulsion. The same watch, too. Because I wanted to remember who I was then, cold, precise, angry, and compare it to who I'd become now. The clock hit 2. The door opened. And there he was. He looked older. Thinner. But not broken, just worn in the way honest work wears a man down. His hands were calloused. His eyes were clear. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he whispered, "Dad?" I gestured toward the chair across from me. "Sit." He did, slowly, carefully. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy with everything that hadn't been said for 2 years. Finally, he broke the silence. "You're the client, aren't you?" "Yes." He nodded once, quietly. I should have known. The design, the attention to detail, it felt familiar. I leaned back. "You passed the test." He blinked. "Test?" "The clause, the contract, the whole project." He didn't look angry. He just sighed. "Did I pass because I refused to be taken advantage of?" "Yes," I said, "because you finally valued your own work. Because you didn't act desperate." He looked down at his hands, nodding. I guess I needed to fall far enough to learn that lesson. I studied him carefully. The arrogance was gone. So was the defensiveness. In its place was quiet accountability. I said, "Stephen, do you understand what you did to us? To your mother? To me?" His voice cracked. "Every day," he said, "there hasn't been a day I don't think about it. About her crying on that balcony. About you walking in that door. About what I became." He took a deep breath. "I lost everything because of my choices. But I also found something I never had before, respect for myself. I work, I earn, I live small, but honestly, I'm not asking for forgiveness. Dad, I just want you to know I'm not the same man who betrayed you." I believed him. For the first time, I truly believed him. But belief doesn't erase consequences. It only makes forgiveness possible. I said, "Stephen, change isn't words, it's consistency. You've shown me the beginning of that. But rebuilding trust, that takes years." He nodded. "I know. Then we'll start small. A conversation, maybe a call with your mother. But on my terms." Tears filled his eyes. "Anything," he whispered. That night, I told Claire everything. She listened quietly, her eyes bright with both joy and fear. "Do you think he's really changed?" she asked. "I do," I said, "and I think he's ready to prove it." We agreed to take it slow. No reunions, no forgiveness speeches. Just a video call. 1 hour, with the grandchildren. That Sunday, we set up the laptop in the living room. When the screen lit up, there he was, Stephen, sitting in a small apartment, the twins beside him. "Say hi to Grandma and Grandpa," he said softly. 2 small voices said, "Hi." And for the first time in years, the silence in our house broke, replaced by laughter. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't hide pain anymore. Claire cried quietly beside me, smiling through the tears. I felt something warm rise in my chest, not forgiveness yet. But hope. A fragile, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption had begun. Months passed after that first call. At first, the video chats were short, polite, careful, filled with pauses. Stephen would update us on work. Claire would ask about the twins. And I would mostly listen. But slowly, something changed. The calls became warmer. The children started laughing freely. And Claire began to smile again, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in years. Every Sunday, it became routine. Same time, same ritual. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about showing up. That's the thing about rebuilding trust, it doesn't return with apologies. It returns with consistency. 6 months later, Stephen asked if they could visit. Not to stay, just for a weekend, at a hotel nearby. We agreed, under conditions. No talk about money. No talk about inheritance. Just time. When they arrived, I watched from the balcony as their car pulled up. Stephen stepped out first, helping the kids, then looked at the house like a man facing a ghost. Claire was the first to move. She walked forward, opened her arms, and hugged her son. No words, just years of pain, dissolving quietly between them. When my turn came, Stephen hesitated. I extended my hand. He took it. That was enough. The weekend went smoothly, cautiously. The twins played on the beach. Building sandcastles with Claire. Stephen sat beside me in silence, both of us watching the waves. It felt almost normal, but in a new, fragile way. Like walking on glass that could crack at any wrong step. That night, after the kids went to sleep, Stephen returned alone. He stood by the balcony door, nervous. "Dad," he said, "I need to tell you something." I looked up from my glass of scotch. "Go on." When I was plotting to take the house, I thought I was protecting my family. I told myself it was for the kids, that I was securing their future. But now I know, I wasn't protecting them. I was teaching them greed, teaching them to cheat, to manipulate. If I hadn't been stopped, they would have grown up thinking that was normal. "You didn't just save Mom. You saved me, and you saved them." For a long time, I didn't say anything. Then I said quietly, "That's why I did it." He nodded, eyes wet. "I just wanted you to know. I understand now." When he left that night, I felt something I hadn't in years, pride. Not in his success, but in his honesty. The visits became regular, every few months. Each time, the tension faded a little more. Each time, the laughter came easier. Stephen started bringing sketches for new hotel designs. Not to ask for approval, just to share ideas. To connect again through something real. 3 years after that Christmas, he came with big news. "Dad, I've been offered a partnership at the firm," he said, excitement mixing with fear. "I need to invest $300,000 to buy in." I waited for the question I feared. But it never came. He didn't ask for money. Instead, he asked, "What do you think I should do?" I studied him. "How much have you saved?" $150,000. "Half. And the bank?" "They'll lend the rest. High interest, though." I leaned back, thinking. "If I offered you the loan," I said, "not as a gift, as a real loan, with a contract, interest, deadlines, would you take it?" He stared at me, shocked. "Yes, if it's business, not charity." "Good," I said, "because that's the only way I'd ever do it." We drew up the papers that week. Lawyers, signatures, real terms. No emotion, just professionalism. And he paid me back every month, on time. Never late. Never with excuses. That, to me, was worth more than the money itself. 5 years after that Christmas, Claire and I celebrated our 40th anniversary. We hosted a small gathering, close friends, a few colleagues, quiet music, good wine. For the first time in half a decade, Stephen and the twins were invited. Halfway through the evening, Stephen stood up unexpectedly. He raised his glass, his voice steady. "I want to say something," he said. The room went silent. 5 years ago, I was not a good man. I was selfish, weak, entitled. I conspired against the 2 people who gave me everything. And instead of forgiving me too easily, they did something harder. They taught me consequences. They took everything away so I could rebuild myself from nothing. They gave me the space to fail, to fall, and to learn what integrity means. I'm standing here tonight not as the man who was saved by his parents' money, but as the man who was rebuilt by their discipline. So, Mom, Dad, thank you, not for what you gave me, but for what you took away. It saved me." Claire cried. I didn't. Not because I wasn't moved, because for the first time, I didn't need to. The peace in my chest said everything tears couldn't. That night, after everyone left, we sat together on the balcony again, the same spot where Claire once cried in silence. The same place where I once planned my revenge. The ocean breeze carried laughter from the children playing downstairs. Claire turned to me. "Was it worth it?" she asked. I took a long breath before answering. "Yes," I said, "because we didn't just get our son back. We got a better man." She smiled softly. "And what about the will?" I looked out at the waves, thinking. It stays as it is. For now, Stephen earns everything he has now. And maybe one day, he'll earn a small part of what's left. But he'll never inherit the whole empire. That's not the legacy I want to leave. Claire nodded. "Then what is?" I turned to her. "The legacy isn't money, it's the lesson. That family isn't built on inheritance. It's built on integrity. Years later, when I finally updated my will at 70, I gave Stephen 20%. Not because he was my son, but because he proved himself for over a decade. The rest went to charity, to help families that didn't have the second chances we did. When I told him, he smiled. "Dad," he said, "if you'd left me nothing, I'd still be grateful, because the real inheritance was what you made me learn." And that moment, that simple, quiet truth, became the real ending of our story. If you're listening to this on Revenge in Silence, remember this. True revenge isn't about destroying someone who wronged you. It's about forcing them to face the mirror until they change. Sometimes love needs to be strong enough to hurt. Sometimes justice needs to be cold enough to teach. I came home that Christmas expecting love, and found betrayal. But in the silence that followed, I discovered something deeper. That the greatest victory isn't reclaiming what's yours. It's watching the person who betrayed you rebuild themselves into someone better, because of what you made them face. And when that happens, the silence finally feels like peace.